So I've watched both of the Pelicans games this season. I watched the entire game that they played against the Raptors, and I watched about 80 to 85% of the game that they played against the Heat on Christmas. So I feel like I have seen enough of this team to make a fair assessment on this team and where I think they currently are at, what changes they might need to make, and it's clear to me that there are some glaring issues with this team. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that I do think this team has a ton of potential. I think there's a world in which they make the 8th seed, and with the Warriors playing worse and worse and a James Harden trade coming closer and closer to coming to fruition, I feel like the chances of the Pelicans getting the 8th seed continue to grow and grow with each coming day, and there's a good chance they make it there. The main issue with this team is their starting lineup and how it fits with one another. They've obviously got a lot of talent there, but the fit isn't the best in the world, and I do have some questions about it. First off, with Lonzo Ball, we all know that Lonzo's got a great all-around game, but he's always struggled in half-court settings as a scorer, right? It's good that he's improved as a three-point shooter, and he's become above average from there. If you look at his percentage last year, he was about 37-38%, which is above league average, but he doesn't have the ability to score at the rim. He's never been good at drawing fouls. He's never had much of a mid-range game, and I'm a little bit disappointed in the way that Lonzo's played these first two games, because in the preseason, he was attacking the rim. He was taking some mid-range jumpers, attempting some floaters, and I want to see him do that more in the regular season, because as of right now, he has a bad habit of just passing when he's coming off the screen in the pick and roll, and that can limit you as a team if the defense knows what you're going to do every time. If he can add a floater, if he can add a mid-range game that he can go to from time to time, then that's going to make the defense have to adjust and have to respect him there. In most cases, Lonzo's going to be running a pick and roll with Zion or Steven Adams, and neither of those guys are threats to pop in the pick and roll because they don't have perimeter jump shots, right? So they're not a threat from outside the paint. They're always looking to roll, so it's going to have to be Lonzo's responsibility to take shots in the mid-range so that there's some level of threat to score in the in-between game in the pick and roll, right? So he's got to add that. Everything else in his game is good. It's solid. I like it, but you can't tell me that he can be the point guard of the future for a team with Zion as one of the primary scorers who likes to attack the rim a lot. And it seems like this Pelicans team has committed to Steven Adams too. They gave him an extension. So you can't tell me that Lonzo's current style of play can really fit with those two guys long term. And I'm a big Lonzo Ball fan, but I'm just being honest. He's got to improve that in-between game, that mid-range game, floaters, attacking the rim, trying to draw fouls. He's got to try to add that to his game more if he wants to stay with this team, because that's the only way he's going to really effectively fit in well with this team going forward. Then there's Eric Bledsoe. And Bledsoe, he's been a good defender for the Pelicans so far, but I did have concerns about how he would fit with this team on the offensive end. Just because, weirdly enough, Bledsoe is a very good three-point shooter off the dribble. He has a good three-point percentage off the dribble, but in catch-and-shoot situations, he's not very good from three. He doesn't have the best percentage, which is just strange because in most cases with most players, it's the other way around. But regardless, Bledsoe's not a very good three-point shooter in catch-and-shoot situations, and that hurts because Zion is one of the primary scorers on this team, and he's always looking to get to the rim, right? And Zion's a very good finisher at the rim, so defenses are going to look to provide as much help at the rim as they can to stop Zion, right? To make life as difficult as they can for him. So if they find that they can help off of a guy because he's not really a threat from the three-point line in catch-and-shoot situations, the defense is going to do that. So if Bledsoe has more games like he did against Miami and less games like he did against Toronto, where he actually shot it well from three, he shot it well in catch-and-shoot situations, the defense is going to do that, and they're going to help off a guy like Bledsoe. We already saw in the first game against Toronto was very eager to double-team Zion when he got the ball in the post, right, they would double team off of a guy like Bledsoe or even Lonzo because he's been inconsistent with his three. They were going to live with those guys making threes versus Zion just barreling his way to the rim, right? And I can see other teams kind of adopting that strategy. So Bledsoe, he's got to hit his threes. And if he doesn't, maybe you put JJ Redick in that starting lineup and have Bledsoe come off the bench and be the sixth man, right? So we'll see if he can step it up, but he's definitely going to have to if this team wants to be more successful. Another guy that they brought in this offseason was Steven Adams. And look, I love Steven Adams, and I think that he does provide some much needed help in certain areas for this Pelicans team. Last year, they weren't very good on the interior, on the defensive end. They struggled rebounding the ball, and Steven Adams just gives them that interior presence that they needed, right? That they lacked last year. So he's very helpful there. But on the offensive end, I just worry for, the course of the season, how he's going to fit next to Zion, because he doesn't really complement him well. Zion's a guy, like I said, who is always looking to get to the rim, and Steven Adams kind of clogs the rim for him. He kind of clogs the paint for him. So I don't know how I feel about that addition yet. There's things I like about it, things I don't like too much. What I didn't like was that the Pelicans were so quick to extend a guy like Steven Adams. I think they gave him a 2-year extension, $35 million or something like that. And it just makes me wonder why they were so quick to extend him, but yet they didn't give an extension to lonzoball, or they didn't give an extension to Josh Hart, but they were so eager to give an extension to Steven Adams, a guy who hadn't even played with Zion at that point. We hadn't even seen them play games together at all, and they were eager to give him an extension. They were so quick to give him an extension. So we'll have to see again, kind of same thing. We'll have to get a bigger sample size, but I do have some fears that he might not be the center of this future for this team just because of the fit on the offensive end, right? Then Zion, I wanted to talk about him too because I feel like he's the main selling point of this team. He's the main attraction. Even though Brandon Ingram is, in my opinion, the best player on this team, Zion is the first guy that everyone thinks of when they hear the New Orleans Pelicans, when you talk about the Pelicans, right? The thing with Zion, as great as he is, he needs to add to his offensive game. And I'm not going to say, he needs to become a really good mid-range shooter. He needs to be shooting shots off the dribble, develop a pull-up jumper, be shooting threes and stuff like that. I mean, hopefully that stuff can at some point come to his game. But at this point, he just needs to add and improve on his right hand, because whenever he's driving to the bucket, he's either driving left, or when he's driving right, he's using his offhand. And I mean, yeah, you can do that in the regular season. He could probably average 25 points a game this year, and that's super impressive to do that primarily with one hand, essentially. And everyone knows you want to get to the rim, but you're still able to score. That's super impressive, but in the playoffs, is that going to work? I don't think so, because we've seen with Giannis, he's been super dominant in the regular season, but these last two playoff runs, he struggled. And in those series that they lost, Giannis was limited, and he didn't look like the same superstar that he was during the regular season, during his 2 MVP years. So just going forward, I know that it's important for Zion to add that right hand to his game so that he can at least become a more dynamic driver. Another thing that I'd like to see Zion try to add to his game is a little bit of a face-up jump shot in the mid-range, just because there are many times where Zion likes to post up, and immediately when he gets the ball in the post, he'll face up, right? That's his immediate instinct. So when he faces up, he always likes to put the ball on the floor and drive at his defender, right? Usually he'll try to put his shoulder into him, bounce him back a little bit, be physical, he embraces contact and stuff. But ultimately, Zion's trying to get to the rim when he faces up, and he's trying to get a bucket at the rim, draw a foul, whatever, right? He's trying to get into the paint. But by adding a little bit of a mid-range face-up set shot jumper, if he can knock that down at least a respectable percentage, that could force the defense to at least play up on him a little bit and not just give him a wide open mid-range jumper, if he shows that he can hit it every once in a while, they could play up on him more, and that's just going to give him more lanes to the bucket and going to make life easier on him in general, right? I like that he's been taking some threes. He's taken about 2 or 3 3-pointers in the first few games. I don't want to see him attempting like 7 or 8 or anything like that, but it's nice that he is attempting them, because that way he will improve on them. You're only going to improve by taking them in games. And yeah, if he can become a good, a solid set shot 3-point shooter, a solid set shot mid-range shooter when he faces up, that's just going to open up a lot more for him. So hopefully as the season progresses, he can continue to improve on that. And the last guy in the starting lineup, Brandon Ingram. Honestly, I've got nothing really to say about Ingram, just because he's looked so good these first 2 games. And if you're New Orleans, if you're a fan of the Pelicans, you should be super excited about this guy, because you just extended him on like a 5-year, $150 million deal or something like that. Honestly, that might even be a bargain right now, and it's definitely going to be a bargain in like 1 to 2 years, because this guy's got superstar potential. He can score from anywhere on the floor. He's improving as a rebounder, as a passer. His all-around game is getting better. The only thing I'd like to see from him is just more consistent effort on the defensive end. But this team has good defenders already. They're a pretty good defensive team. The defense against Miami wasn't great. That's another thing that they do have to improve on as a team. Their communication looks really bad. Their communication does not look good. They were leaving shooters open way too many times. There were a lot of times where Bam was getting pretty easy lobs and passes in the pick and roll for easy finishes. They've got to improve their communication, but I think that will get better as the season progresses. However, this team did look good against Toronto, and Toronto is still a very good team in the East, so that was a big win for them. It showed that they can be a good team in this league. It's just that with that Miami loss, there were so many things that I noticed in that game that I just felt like I had to talk about them and give my opinion on the things that they needed to work on. Hopefully they can continue to play more games like they did in that season opener against Toronto, but we'll just have to see. There's going to have to be improvement individually for a lot of the players on this team, and then as a whole, like I said, their communication has to get better on the defensive end. They've got potential there. This whole team has a ton of potential to be very good, so hopefully they can get better throughout the season and live up to the hype, live up to the expectation.